Here's a question for you. What did you make of the budget? I know that was so last week, but come on, I haven't had a chance to give my 10 cents on it. And honestly, there wasn't much more than 10 cents in the actual budget. Some people described it as the broccoli budget. I'm not sure I'd go there because I quite like broccoli, actually. Maybe, I don't know, best description I would have, maybe it's the tofu budget. Because whilst it appears to have some substance, it doesn't go down well with everyone. I don't know. What's your thoughts? If you have a culinary analogy or whatever, I'd love to get your feedback. 8168, the number to text. Start your message with the first word comments. Joining me on the program now from Pillar, Arian, Tashakkori. Kia ora, good morning. Thanks for your time.
Morning, Andrew.
Any thoughts on that? Broccoli, tofu, would you have a culinary descriptor for what you thought of the budget?
I haven't actually thought of culinary descriptive, but it's certainly not a meaty budget.
This is why I was going for tofu. I think
That's right.
It was like, all we can afford is tofu now. It's not.
Yes.
It's not pork belly, that's for sure.
Yes, that's right.
And hey, given the economic times that we're under, perhaps some expectation there. But on balance, good news, bad news. Was there any good news? Anything you liked about the budget, Arian?
As a civil liberties organisation here at Pillar, we don't make too many economic comments about the state of the economy and inflation and all that. But broadly speaking, there's a silver lining when your government is running out of money. And particularly, it's not the government's money, it's Kiwis' money. But that silver lining is that as the government runs out of money, it's forced to be smaller. And a smaller government means bigger people. There's a democratizing effect, essentially, where the government is almost forced to do less. And as a result, we see individuals and civil liberties organizations and advocacy organizations having to actually step up and do less outsourcing of our love for our neighbor to the government and actually maybe do it ourselves a little bit. So in that sense, it's been positive.
I know something else which you guys have commented on quite a bit is the influence of China in our part of the world and how we as a little nation in the South Pacific can push back. Some extra funding for defence, although it's not going to buy a new navy.
No, certainly not. But it's a positive outlook. We've seen a $1.5 billion boost where there's been significant cuts and savings in other parts of the budget. We've seen a significant boost in defence spending. And the reality is, as I'm sure you would know and listeners would know and have heard in recent months and years, is that New Zealand is operating in a very different strategic environment. It's not benign and it's not kind and friendly. And so we can't afford the same luxuries that we could in the past. In the past, we've spent less than 1% of our GDP on defense. But in a world where China is increasingly looking to exert its influence in the Pacific, and in New Zealand in particular, we do actually need to protect our national sovereignty and our democracy, because if we're not able to, those other forces who very much so hate our democracy, and that word very strongly, because we're able to speak up and point to the evils that are being committed by authoritarian regimes across the world, then we're at the threat of losing our democratic institutions as well. I would say it's a positive thing that we are increasing our defence spending.
And doubling our percentage of GDP, not enough for Pete Hegseth. So we're freeloading from his perspective.
If you compare us to the Americans, where they spend hundreds of billions of dollars of US dollars on a military, then I don't know how much I would have to spend for them to be happy. But broadly speaking, it might not be a nice thing to say, but it is maybe a fair comment for us to consider. Look, are we doing our part in securing our region, both for ourselves, but also for our partners in the Pacific? New Zealand is almost the first country they look to in the case of a disaster, whether it's a natural disaster, but also in the case of war or conflict. We do actually want to be a responsible friend and partner in the region.
On the not so good side of the ledger on this one, some areas of concern, particularly when it comes to civil rights and liberties. What's got you concerned, Arian?
There's two separate elements. One is allocated funding, which we don't actually know how much it is because of commercial sensitivities, but that's money being allocated to biometric identification capabilities for police. Now, one of the reasons we're very concerned about this is because currently, as I think I spoke with you a couple of weeks ago about this, Andrew, is that there's a bill going through Parliament. It's currently with Select Committee that looks to give police almost, as it stands, unvetted power to record images of the public. Now, you pair that with new spending as part of the $76 million initiative. Part of it is being given to this biometric identification scheme. You pair those two, the new technology with this unvetted power, and we have some serious concerns around privacy rights for Kiwis. We do actually believe that police do an incredible job in protecting individual life, liberty in New Zealand, but that power rests firmly on a strong foundation of public trust. And if we're giving them powers that are unvetted and also empowering them with new technologies that we actually have little information about, that trust in police is at risk of being eroded. And so very concerned about that. So that's one part of it. If I may comment on the other part, which we're also concerned about, is, as I've spoken to you extensively, is this discussion about social media and banning social media for under 16s and alleviating the harms associated, the alleged harms at least. There's $30 million associated to that across 4 years. It's being spent next year, 7 the year following, and the 2 years after is $8 million. Now, we have no idea what that policy is going to look like. And in a sense, this is almost undemocratic in the sense that there's only really one party in this coalition government that is pursuing this. This wasn't something that was discussed in the campaigning leading up to the election, but now we have $30 million of our money, it's taxpayer money, being allocated to something we know very little about.
Okay, this is an unfolding story in this one in particular. We had a job description, we had an indication that this is the way the government was leading. Now we've got a budget framework. I suppose the opportunity in an election year to ask some questions, to put some feet to the fire on this one and say, so what did you have in mind, government? Because at least this isn't something which is hidden behind commercial sensitivity, but actually if we could have some clear policies on this, then people would be able to make a decision, hey, in the balance between keeping kids safe on the internet and our personal freedoms, are we happy that this policy has the balance right? At least we can have the conversation.
Totally. And the reality is, so far, we haven't been able to have that conversation. And as you heard me say, when the select committee inquiry happened, the report was very much so that the conclusions were arrived before any writing took place at all. And so we have very little confidence in that report. And as it seems, the ACT Party, part of this coalition government, has come out and said, look, we don't actually support this initiative because you're going to end up setting up an online regulator like those in Australia and the UK and Europe. And I think the party, New Zealand First, is also a similar stance. And so that's 2/3 of the coalition government saying they're not sure about this policy, and Kiwis haven't actually been able to sit down or vote on this or discuss this broadly. So we'll have to keep our eyes on it.
And also, of course, come November, we'll get to decide whichever side forms a government, what the percentages are will give bargaining power and in terms of which parties' policies make the coalition agreement. Certainly much to discuss in that regard and, have some robust conversations with politicians about whether or not they support it, particularly if it's something that you're concerned about. Arian, really appreciate what you and the team at Pillar do to shine a light on areas of concern. Thanks so much for the work that you do at Pillar. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Andrew.